has told me I can only talk about the office.
So at some point, this 2002 memo was implemented. Is that right?
What do you mean by implemented, sir?
Well, do you know what the word implemented means?
The gentleman will suspend for a moment and stop the clock, please. Professor, are you asserting a privilege?
On the last question of the previous two.
Either one of them.
The first two he asked me I have to, because of the instructions by the Justice Department, that I can't discuss internal deliberations. I can
and exactly what privilege are you asserting?
I assume the Justice Department, I can't say what the Justice Department's belief for the
wait
they ordered me not to discuss.
Well, hold on. You're testifying before a congressional committee.
Okay.
The Justice Department cannot order you with regard to your testimony. It can instruct you to take a privilege if you are entitled to a privilege. You can take the privilege without their instructions if you're entitled to the privilege. If you are asserting a privilege, you're entitled to do so, but we're entitled to ask you what privilege it is you're asserting.
Yes,
so, and whether they're ordering you to assert a privilege or not, if the privilege is there, you can assert it. If it isn't there, you can't assert it, whatever they say.
I believe it's the attorney-client privilege, sir.
So you're asserting the attorney-client privilege and not answering the question you were asked. And we will take that, since you are not here under subpoena, we will take that under advisement and consider that at the end of the hearing. We'll resume the questioning, and the clock will resume.
Mr. Yu, are you denying knowledge of what the word implement means?
No, I wanted to know.
What does implement mean, sir?
You're asking me to define what you mean by the word?
No, I'm asking you to define what you mean by implement. What do you understand the term to mean?
I mean, it can mean a wide number of things.
Okay, look, you contributed to the writing of the 2002 memo. Is that right?
Yes, I do.
The name on the memo was Bybee, but you contributed to the memo, right?
Yes, sir.
The memo was implemented at some point. Is that right?
What do you mean by implemented, sir?
What I mean by implemented is the guidance that was set forth in that legal memorandum was followed and put into action. Do you understand what I mean by implemented now, sir?
So you're asking me, was the memo followed? Was the memo followed by?
I'm not going to get into semantical games with you in this 5 minutes. I need you to answer the question or refuse to. Was the memo implemented?
The memo was signed and provided.
I know what signed means, and so do you. Stop wasting my time, Mr. Yu.
I'm not trying to, sir.
Was the memo followed? Will you accept followed?
I don't have personal knowledge about how it was followed, but I expect.
I didn't ask you about how. I asked you whether it was followed, sir.
Sir, you're asking me about things that other people would have done, not me.
So the fact is, so the memo was never put into effect. Are you making that claim?
No, sir. Let me go back and refer to my opening statement.
Forget it. Mr. Schrader, do you understand what implement means?
I think I do. Yes, sir.
Was this memo, this 2002 memo, which Mr. Yu refuses to answer questions about, ever put into effect?
Of course, I have no personal knowledge. I wasn't in the.
I'm not asking you about personal knowledge. I'm based on your study.
My understanding is that the memo was prompted, at least in part, by a specific request of the CIA with respect to what kinds of procedures their operatives would be able to use in interrogating some high-level al-Qaeda detainees. And that once the advice was forthcoming, my understanding, it's all from published investigative reporting, I have no first-hand knowledge myself, is that some of the techniques that fell on the legal side of the line, according to the memorandum, were employed.
So is that right, Mr. Yu? Were the legal techniques that you outlined in this memo employed?
Were the techniques that were legal? Let me say this. We did not make decisions about policy.
I didn't ask you about that. I did not ask you about that, sir. I want to know if the legal advice that you gave in that memo was followed, or if you expected it was followed.
You know, again, Mr. Ellison, I don't.
Did anyone ever come to you and ask you for an interpretation of your memo?
Interpretation of my memo?
Did the interrogators ever come back and say, we got the memo?
Without objection, the gentleman will have one additional minute to finish this line of questioning.
Did the interrogators ever return to you and say, you know, you've given us this memo, but we want to implement a certain technique. Do we fall within the memo? Was that scenario ever played out?
Again, sir, because of the instructions of the Justice Department, I can't tell you. That's not my clock, I assume.
Mr. Schrader, Mr. Schrader, was the memo in effect during Abu Ghraib?
The gentleman will suspend again. Professor Yu, are you asserting a privilege? What was the question? What was the question? Okay. I heard.
Sir, I'm afraid Mr. Ellison's questions may involve a discussion of classified information, which, because of congressional statute, I'm not at liberty to discuss in a public setting.
So you were asserting the privilege against the revelation of classified information in answering your question?
I don't know if that's a privilege. I just can't do that, sir. I'm not saying it's a privilege. I just can't. That's a violation of the law.
Well, so you're asserting that that in order to answer Mr. Ellison's question, you would have to reveal classified information?
I might have to, sir.
Might have to or do have to? Can you let me rephrase the question?
As I understand,
let me rephrase the question. Is there any way you can answer Mr. Ellison's question without revealing classified information?
Yeah, as I understand the question, I would have to discuss classified information to provide him a complete answer. I don't think I can do that, sir.
Well, again, we'll take that under advisement.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a parliamentary inquiry? I make a parliamentary inquiry of the chair.
The gentleman will state his parliamentary inquiry.
I would inquire of the chair, after we come back from our break, from voting on the floor, if the chair would consider directing, particularly the two government witnesses, Mr. Yu and Mr. Addington. I have noticed, Mr. Chairman, I've been on the committee for a year and a half. I've never seen two witnesses, frankly, struggle as much to appreciate ordinary use of terms and questions. Would you consider instructing the two witnesses to answer the questions that they're asked, and if they wish to elaborate or clarify them, they can ask to do so? But given that we have time constraints, I would ask that the chair admonish the witnesses to err on the side of being responsive as opposed to constantly quibbling over word choice, because I've never seen it to the degree I've seen it today.